What was it that made you decide to do the doula training in the first place?
So I have always been interested in women's health and birth stuff specifically. My mum is a gynecologist, and when I was younger, I used to want to be a midwife, and then went off and had a corporate career for years. And then I don't know, those things stay in your brain a little bit. So I decided a few years ago, somebody mentioned doulas to me, and I was like, oh. That sounds nice. That sounds like all the things that I like doing. And in the meantime, I'd also done training as a yoga teacher, a counselor, and done a few bits in like massage and women's health stuff. So it seemed like the perfect thing to like amalgamate everything together. And then I came across Nurturing Birth, and I think I booked within a day of reading the website because it just sounded amazing.
What did you think doula work was going to be like before you did the training, and what surprised you once you actually started?
I think, like a lot of other people, especially people who haven't trained as a doula as well, people think that doulas are very hippie and we just do home births and we just stand there and wave sage around and say some lovely things to women. But I mean, that is obviously a part of it sometimes when you get those kind of clients. But it's so much more than that, I mean, obviously, with maternity services the way that they are at the moment, there is a lot of people who need support with hospital births and all of the things that come around that. So a lot of antenatal prep work for that. And then also, I didn't know anything about the postnatal side of doulaing until I got involved in it, and then realized that that's also something that I'm massively interested in. So it's people. I think people think it's such like a small little avenue, but it's such a big world once you step into it.
What's one thing you wish someone had told you before you started the training?
I think my main thing would probably be about, like, I always thought that being self-employed sometimes meant that you would be working by yourself a lot of the time. And that was one of my like apprehensions about going self-employed, of not working for a company and being with people every day. And I did think that maybe going into an industry where it's a lot of doulas and we're all competing for the same jobs, that it might be a bit, I don't want to say competitive, but like we're all going for the same jobs. But my view on that has been totally shattered since starting working as a doula. I mean, as soon as I stepped into the role and reached out to a few doulas, I was literally like taken in to the new little community. And this is one of the things that we teach a lot on the course, of get out there and speak to all the doulas, because you think, oh, but we're against each other, like trying to get jobs. But that these people were the first people who were like, let's go for coffee. Let me tell you about the hospitals in the area. Let me tell you about the community. Do you want to come for lunch for our doula meetup or something like that? So it's so nice just knowing that you still have a lot of people around you and that everybody's supporting each other, and we are still a big community. So it does feel like you're still kind of part of a workplace. It's just a bigger workplace.
What are the biggest myths about being a doula that you would love to bust?
There are so many, so many. I think the first one that I came across when I was doing my doula training as well, is that you have to have had children to be a doula. Obviously, on the course, there's a mixture of people who have and haven't had kids. Everyone's got different experiences, and I think both bring really good things to being a doula. Some people have got that lived experience, which is amazing. And then those of us who don't have kids have a really open, fresh mind, and we're very open to whatever. I mean, I'd say to clients, like, if you want to give birth in a forest or you want to give birth in a theatre, like, whatever. I have no experience myself to say that either one is right. So that's a big one. And I've also found that clients aren't really bothered by it at all. And you can use the kind of saying of like, do you think that your midwife is going to have had kids? Or like, it doesn't mean that we're not good at our jobs.
If you could go back to the beginning of your doula journey and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
First one, trust your intuition 100%. You will get feelings with certain clients when they come to you, and you will just think, there's something not quite right about this. 99% of the time, it turns out that that feeling is right, and you will discover along the way that there was a reason for that. My other one would also be, don't take on every single training course just because you don't feel good enough to do it yet. just go and doula. Just throw yourself into it. You don't need 5,000 training courses and still no confidence to actually go and do it. And also just charge your worth as well. Like just because you're a brand new doula doesn't mean you should be charging any less than, I don't know, a doula who's been doing it for 1 year, 5 years, anything. You're still doing the same job. You're still giving the same amount of energy and you're still providing the support that the person needs. So you should still be charging very good money for that. I think that's something we underestimate when we first start this about how much like energy and support is, and it can really take a toll on you.
What does success as a doula actually look like to you now that you're actually in it?
I think when you first go into doulaing as kind of a brand new doula, we all get very excited about thinking that we're going to like change the system and we're going to just be supporting home births and convincing women that physiological birth is amazing and doing all of this amazing, lovely, pretty stuff. And then when you start doing the work, I think your view on that will change. I think mine definitely did. I think for a first few births that I did, I felt like I wasn't succeeding because the women weren't getting these magical births that I've read about in books. But then you get the women coming to you afterwards and they say, oh, but the support I had was amazing and I'm not traumatized and I had a lovely birth experience. And even though at that time I might have looked at it and said, what? But you had an epidural and you might have had forceps or something. But they're still coming out saying, but you were amazing and I didn't have any trauma and I felt heard and supported and everything like that. I think your view on success completely changes as you work through. Like I now can go and support someone who even ends up having an emergency C-section. And if she comes out of that birth saying, "Oh my God, like I felt like I was totally listened to, I made confident choices, and I think my birth experience was great," amazing. Like I think that is success. Like we're supporting women to make their own choices and feel empowered through it. And that can look totally different for every single birth. So it's not all flowers and birth pools and sage. It can be theatres and women crying emotionally and having the most amazing day of their life still.
When did you see this as a proper business and not just a passion project?
Most of us do go into it kind of more as a passion project. So we have this amazing passion for birth. And we may just kind of dip a toe in and be like, oh, I'll try and, I don't know, do some postnatal or a little bit. And sometimes people do it working alongside other jobs. I was in a position, very luckily, that I had support that I kind of could just throw myself straight into it, rather than working alongside another job. So did just kind of go for it. Although I think having come from a very corporate background, it feels very different that you're creating your own business. And I think that it does take a while before you actually think, oh, actually, I've created something here and I am the CEO of this and I am in charge of what hours I want to work and how much I want to earn and who I want to work with. And I think there is a point. I think it does take a few months before you actually like look at yourself and go, oh my God, look what I've done so far. Look what I've created. Look how much money I've earned, and I've done all of this myself. And then I think there is a point at some time where I think most of us have had this where you do realize actually I need to put some better like systems in place because this is a business now. It's not just a fun little thing I do on the side. And then you need to start looking at accountants and like systems online and things like that. And then you're like, oh, actually, like, wow, I'm a business, I'm a company. I think it comes in like teeny little bits until one day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, this is incredible and I've done amazing. And then, oh, I mean, then you get to this point and now you want to expand even more and do a million other things.
Finish this sentence for me. Being a doula is not.
Being a doula is not the same for every single doula. It's so different. I mean, you can literally choose the kind of doula you want to be. So somebody saying, I'm a doula, like if I met somebody and said, oh, I'm a doula, and they say, I'm a doula too, we could be doing completely different jobs. I know a lot of doulas who have specific things that they love focusing on. So there's a lot of people who love doing postnatal and they will be mostly a postnatal doula. and they will bring in all different kinds of things. Obviously, everybody's had their own different training as well. So there's some people who focus really strongly on like nutrition in postnatal or massage in postnatal, or there's a lot of people who just do like overnight work alongside postnatal as well because that works for them and their family. So they really enjoy doing that. And then there's obviously people who do birth, but then there's some people who only support home births. There's some people who only support hospital births. There's some people who choose to work only with single mums or minority groups, or there's charities that you can work for. I know a lot of doulas who only do charity work. So it's so different for everybody, and that's the beauty of this work is that you get to choose the bits you're interested in, the bits that excite you, and then create your business around that.
What would you say to someone who's on the fence, scared that they're not quite ready?
I would say just do it. Just jump into it. You've obviously got something in you that's saying you should have a look into it, or you've got some little passion inside you for birth or something that's making you look at it in the first place. And I know that sometimes comes from mums who've had some kind of birth experience that they then feel really strongly that they want to support other women, or it could be from somebody like me who's never had kids, but I have just such an interest in supporting women and lots of other more of the nutrition and postnatal and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, just do it. I don't think any of us ever feel fully ready. You literally just have to throw yourself in it. And I think if you look at some other doulas and you will have that comparison and think, oh, like I'm not as good as that person, I'm not as good as that person. But you have your own things to bring to it. And like you might meet a client and you two will click instantly on a discovery call. And even though you've got no experience or whatever, like if we're saying comparing to other doulas, but you will support that woman better than anybody else will because you have that connection. Yeah, just do it. Throw yourself into it. The only way you're going to learn is by doing it. And it's amazing and magical and it's a lovely job.
What did you do at the beginning to build your client base and get your name out there?
So when I first started, I did all of the more like basic things. So I created my website, got my packages and stuff all ready and prepared, so I knew what I was going to be offering. And then what I actually did is I went on to Doula UK and I searched doulas in my area and I found all of their email addresses and I emailed all of them and said, "Hello, I'm a new doula. Do you want to meet up for a coffee?" And out of like 20 of them, I think probably like 50% replied and said yes. So I just went and networked and got onto the local WhatsApp groups, the local Facebook groups of doulas in the area, and just met up with as many people as I could just to kind of let people know that I was around. And I think that's one of the really good ways of getting yourself out there and starting, even if you start slowly, but one doula, once they've met you, might be like, oh, I need a backup for a few days. Do you mind helping me? And then you've got a few days here. And then you might work really well with that person. And then they might say, oh, actually, I need a shared care. And things snowball quite quickly. But you get in with these groups, and I find a lot of the jobs that I get do come from a lot of the WhatsApp groups, even nowadays, because a lot of people, if, say, for example, I'm getting an inquiry through to my email from a client and I don't have the capacity for it at the moment or I'm fully booked, I will always put it in a WhatsApp group first of local doulas that I know, just so one of them can take it. Get yourself on all the directories, all the business stuff, work on your Google business page, do your SEO, do all of the things. If you're somebody who wants to go out and start getting clients out in the wild, if you start setting up antenatal classes or bump and baby groups or stuff like that, that's a really good way to do it. There's lots of different ways, but also just tell everyone you're a doula. Say that as much as you can. And you'll get a lot of people asking, oh, what is a doula? And then you get the opportunity to also explain yourself, which gets you really good at actually talking about what the job is, which I think is really good for interview practice as well, of explaining, oh, this is what I do. And it makes you feel a bit more confident of actually recognizing yourself as a doula, because I feel like, especially mentoring some people, they say, but I don't feel like a doula because I haven't done the work yet. But just talk it, like say it, speak it into existence. You are a doula already. Yeah, just tell everybody. And then you never know. Somebody might say, oh, my sister's pregnant. And then you can find clients that way as well. So yeah, Shout it from the rooftops.
Tell me about a client relationship that changed how you see this work.
Okay, there's a story that I tell a lot of the time to some postnatal women. I had a client last summer and I was doing postnatal work for her. And it was the general kind of postnatal stuff. It was, I'd do some cooking for her, I'd look after her baby while she slept, helped her with feeding, stuff like that, very standard stuff. But there was a few sessions where we'd got probably a few weeks in, so she was feeling a lot better. And I came round one day and she was just, she said to me, Sarah, do you drink wine? And I said, I mean, yeah, sometimes, but not while I'm working. And she was like, oh, okay. And then I kind of clocked what she was trying to say. And I said, do you want a glass of wine? And she was like, oh, that would be nice. Do you want to sit on the terrace and we just have a glass of wine together? And I was like, yeah, of course. And it just, we ended up talking for quite a while and we spent our whole session just sitting on the terrace, me holding her baby who was asleep and her drinking her glass of wine. And she just needed relaxation and just normality. She just needed to talk to somebody that then she had seen as a friend who'd supported her through this. And she just needed a release on that day of just like me saying, it's okay. Like, if you need to just sit and have a glass of wine and I'm going to hold your baby, like, that's fine. And I think a lot of women during postnatal, especially, do feel like such a responsibility to like be top of their game as a mother all the time, and that like not needing a glass of wine sometimes is okay if that's what you want. And that day she did, and she spoke to me about how much she missed drinking cocktails and going out with her friends and stuff. So that's a relationship that did change kind of my view on postnatal a lot, and it has kind of opened my eyes to it's not just the standard stuff that we see as postnatal work, which is the work that people need. It is so different for every single person, and even every day that you go and visit them may be something completely different. And I think it also taught me a little bit to what I actually think people are saying sometimes, rather than I think postnatal women, women in general, we're very people pleasing people. Like we're not gonna be like, oh, I want you to do this for me. But sometimes someone might say a little comment and you think, actually, I think she might be saying something different there. So yeah, that taught me that. And also, yeah, sometimes women just need a glass of wine in the sun, even if they've got a 3-week-old baby.
How do you hold space for someone without trying to rescue or fix things for them?
I think this is one of the things that I probably struggled with in my first year or two of doulaing, is that I think we do have this idealized version of birth and stuff because we learn about it and we are all lovers of physiological birth and stuff. That a lot of the time you do feel, I feel like, especially for me personally, I used to go to births and be like, oh, but I want, like, let me help you do this, or let me help you do this. It's also something that we learned I did a biomechanics course separately, and we learned a lot about all these different things that you can do to help a woman during birth. And then you feel sometimes when you go to a birth that you feel like, oh, well, I have to get involved. I have to do something. And this is when we talk about doulas is more about just being there than doing something. Like, even when we learned our biomechanics, the woman who taught us was like, you probably 90% of the time will never need to use any of this stuff. And don't go into a birth thinking you're going to use it. And I think this is also a thing that comes up a lot in when I'm mentoring people, is that they feel like, well, especially when they're going to their first births, they're like, oh, right, well, I've prepped this and I've prepped this and I've got this with me and stuff. And I'd say, like, you probably won't need to use a lot of that stuff. You just need to be there. You just need to just, as we're saying, hold space for somebody without feeling the need to step in. Um, because if we are stepping in, we're taking the power away from the woman. And I do feel like that's a bit more of a thing that, well, obviously, doing this job, you end up doing a lot of work on yourself and realizing that sometimes a lot of us do go into supportive roles like this because we feel we want to help people, we want to do stuff. But I think for me, it's especially changed in the last year where I was getting a bit frustrated going to births and being like, but I didn't do anything and it went not according to plan. Um, and I felt a bit hard on myself. But then realizing that like the women are coming out and still saying like I had a great experience. And then realizing that you don't have to do much. You don't have to save people. You don't have to fix people. If someone comes to you and says, I'm planning on having an epidural and all of the drugs and everything, like amazing. That's her choice. You have no real right to step in and be like, but physiological birth is the best. Like, it's fine. That's her choice. That's her journey. You just need to be there to hold space for her and support her through it.
What did you get wrong with pricing and the business side of things? And what did you do to shift that?
Oh, I think early on, I think many doulas will do this. We undercharge for sure, 100%. Um, you'll look at other people's pricing and be like, oh, but I'm not an experienced doula as much as them, so I'm going to charge half price or something. So yeah, for my first few births, I charged way less than I should have. But my mindset on that changed very quickly after I'd done those births and then realized how much energy you have to put into it. And then realized, actually, no, this, I see now why people charge so much for it, and I'm never going to charge that little again. I think once you've experienced the amount of energy that you put into it, you 100% see the value in what you are offering people. So that's definitely shifted my mindset having experienced it. And then business stuff, I think you just, after a while, do get into this more, hopefully, this more confidence within yourself, and then more of this like CEO mindset, hopefully. And there's bits and pieces that you can, like, I think a lot of us do some kind of business support training or something with there's lots of different coaches and stuff who do free trainings and do little bits of trainings to get you more into that mindset, which I think for me has also been really helpful. And also working with the community as well. I think all of us like spurring each other on all the time. And I've had loads of doulas, like ones who I've come close to now. If we start talking about shared care or something, them turning around and being like, you need to charge more. Like, why are you not charging more? Or like just giving little like hints and tips and compliments and stuff. So I think that really helps as well.
What do you do to avoid burnout? How do you protect your own life alongside doing this work?
I, as I think most doulas do, we start doing the work and then you get very excited and you see the money and you see the births and you see all the opportunities and you take on too much and then you realize you've taken on too much, which I think is a process that a lot of us do go through. And we will always advise doulas, obviously, don't do that. But most of us do it because we get overexcited when we start doing this job. But then I do think, and I've seen this as most of my doula friends as well, you'll get to a point where you actually start to even out and you actually have to put a little bit of effort in to realize like how much do I actually want to work that is financially viable for me. So I'm earning enough money, or whatever money I want to earn, but also working the amount of hours that keeps that stable. So for me, I've done this over the last year of actually figuring out how much of a balance I want to do between birth and postnatal and how many hours that means that I can take on for postnatal, and then how many births I can take on a month that actually leaves me at a level where I do feel okay and I'm not taking on too many births in a month, that mean that I'm going to have to take a few days after each of them to recover, because I think births especially they do, I mean, we might just say, oh, it takes a day or two out of your schedule, but I find that it takes me 2 or 3 days afterwards to get back to energy levels of normality again. So you do have to kind of schedule that in too. And then little things alongside. I think a lot of doulas have their own little like rituals or things after birth. I know a lot of people, especially after spending a day or two in hospital, will get out in nature, 100%. Get yourself out, go for a long walk. A lot of doulas I know go for a massage within the few days after a birth. People have all different things that they like to do. But yeah, will always try and get out in nature and try and have a massage. But obviously that's going to take a whole day. So you kind of have to factor that in as well and make sure that you are giving yourself enough space in your diary to have things like that. But you might be somebody who wants to take on 5 births a month. I mean, five's a bit much, but 2 births a month, 3 births a month, and then you have to factor that in, obviously, with also how much postnatal and stuff you want to work in. Or somebody might want to do 1 birth a month, but do a bit more postnatal. So it's just figuring out what works for you, and I think that does come with a bit of playing around with it. But that's the nice thing about this job as well. Like if you decide after a while you're feeling good again, and then you're like, actually, I might change and suddenly I want to do more births. Amazing. cut down on postnatal or something. And then after doing a few births, might be like, oh no, I'm done with births for a bit. I'm going to up my postnatal instead. So it's a nice flexibility, but it is definitely good to make sure you're always keeping yourself from burning out.
What would you say to someone who assumes that doula work isn't actually a real career?
I would say that they are unaware of what's actually involved in doula work. And having myself come from a corporate career for 15 years of my life and then coming into doula work, I would say that this is so much more involved, so much more exciting as a career. I have so much more control over it and everything like that. And I think a lot of people do still get this. I think because people don't really know what a doula is as much so far. I will say to people sometimes, oh, like I'm a doula, and they're a bit like, oh, what is that? Is it just like some hobby or something? But then even some people in my family, and you might find this some other people as well, that when I see them like distant relatives and stuff, they'll be like, "Oh, how's your little doula thing going? Like, is it still going well?" Like it's a little like fun little thing I do on the side, and I'd want to turn around to them and be like, "Oh yeah, my very successful career where I'm earning probably double the amount of money I did in my corporate career. It's going really well, thank you. Yes, it's amazing, and I only work 3 days a week, and it's lovely. But yeah, obviously we have to be a bit nicer to people sometimes. But yeah, it is a real career. You can make it whatever you want, and it's flexible and great for, I mean, any different type of person. You can make it whatever you want to be. And yeah, you can still earn amazing money.
What would you say to someone who's watching this and who's asking themselves, is there a doula in me?
I think if you've managed to navigate yourself onto this program here and are asking this question, I think you've got your answer. There is something inside you that is saying that there is a doula in there somewhere. And maybe you just need a little bit more confidence to bring that out and a bit more training and a bit more community. But definitely, if there's some little thing inside you that's made you come and have a look and see if there is a doula in you, then I'm saying 100%, you're definitely getting there.